Wait a second. I don't know how.
What's up?
What's up? Great, great. Oh my goodness. Happy Friday, motherfuckers. It is so good to be back. Another episode of DU Real with Jackie, the lovely Jackie and Amanda. We are just shooting the shit and just not taking life too seriously.
Yeah, it kind of doesn't even register to me, too, the fact that we're like recording or that this is going live immediately and people damn well probably are watching this right now. And that used to be a lot bigger of a deal to me. But recently it's kind of felt a little bit easier to just show up and be
Mhm.
whatever the fuck I am because it's just becoming clearer and clearer. Like so clear that I can't deny it to myself anymore that like you don't even know how the fuck you're being perceived like ever. And so like trying to control it in every single second, it's so exhausting. And I can feel what I'm doing it and I'm like this is not worth it.
Mhm.
But
Yeah.
yeah, we're happy to be here on this Friday afternoon. I'm actually like exhausted right now. So that's why I'm like really well, also the bowl I had probably an hour ago. But I'm a little sleepy. Um but
Relax.
that's okay. When I'm really tired, it's also a lot harder to take myself seriously. So, should be a fun chat today. What's
Mhm.
up to all the people in the chat? And Jazz said it's Happy International Women's Day. I didn't know that, but that's pretty sick because we are in fact women.
You know,
I got the parts.
I allegedly fit this definition. So I'm just like, all right. But I totally also did not know it was International Women's Day. And, I was busy living, doing things, kicking butt. And so I am constantly out of the loop for certain international and national holidays. And I'm like, oh, that's today. Yeah, that's right. Holidays happen. They happen in the background of my life because I don't give them too much focus. Right? Because I'm like, what am I don't even know how I would celebrate like International Women's Day. I'm like, do I just, I don't know, keep doing the things that I'm doing, because it doesn't necessarily mean that I need to act more feminine today because it's International Women's Day. It's just, I'm just going to be peopling and I just happen to people with some lady parts.
Yeah, nothing really. I'm just as much of a woman every single day. So every day is National Women's Day to me.
Right.
Yeah, I resonate with the whole like holidays come and go, and then it's kind of just like, oh yeah, this is kind of an arbitrary thing that was like made up, and it has the significance that you give to it, but at
Mhm.
the same time, there's nothing about today that says today is about women, except for like us collectively agreeing on that. But just holidays in general, like I think about things like Valentine's Day just passed, right?
Mhm.
And that is such a Hallmark holiday. Like that's literally just to make like cuz it's just to have a lot of people buy greeting cards and balloons and chocolate and gifts of other various sources. I mean, it's more and more expensive to show somebody you love them these days from, a lot of people's perspective who are materialistic, and that's like the dominant mentality in our society right now. But like yeah, maybe it had its fun foundation in like a pagan holiday or like some sort of religious tradition, or I really don't know the background of Valentine's Day, but recently it's so clear to me that like it's just something that we have socially adopted and is like marketed to us, but that it's kind of shallow like
Mhm.
and it's kind of just more about consumerism. Same thing with Christmas recently too. Like I think the way that certain holidays have been capitalized upon or just created just to create a consumer demand is kind of hilarious. And so, yeah, I don't really take holidays as seriously. It's crazy that people get like all fucking bent out of shape for like not having a Valentine too. It's like who said that that was any sort of measurement of like how you're doing in life?
Authority figures. They definitely,
Yeah.
implied and straight up said, that your purpose is to find your partner and to get married and to have kids and to have someone, and if you're not married, you're engaging with somebody in the pursuit of marrying them. And so like it is our authority figures that have reflected that priority, that preference that you need to be with someone. Because I definitely remember feeling like something was, that I wasn't doing what I was supposed to be doing, just being a single, happy adult woman. I definitely felt like, something was missing. I'm supposed to be with someone, and I avoided it because I saw how toxic a lot of the relationships around me were. And so I just thought, I think I'm gonna hold off on that dumpster fire. I think I could wait. I think I'll wait before I get one dumpster with my name on it. But then after a certain point, it was just not trusting myself, was a big part of not wanting to be in relationships. Not just that I didn't see a lot of healthy ones, because I did see a couple, and so it wasn't like I didn't see people enjoying themselves in relationships. It just felt like a requirement. And I resented that. I resented that I was expected and required to be in a relationship that was socially acceptable to my peers and my family and society as a whole, when I was having so much fun on my own little adventures and taking myself out on dates. And I would get dressed up. I would do the traditional thing that I thought I was supposed to do on dates. And so I would be in a dress and heels, hair done, nails done. And I'd be going to restaurants and I'd be like, table for one, please. And they're like, table for one. And I'm like, yes, one. And I was so happy, and I was chatting with the waiters, and I'm chatting with the bartender, and I'm chatting with people at their tables, and I'm having a blast, and I'm just eating and dancing and thinking of things and laughing by myself at the table and looking like, what it felt crazy, because I definitely got some looks from people. But I was having a blast. And it just kind of confirmed for me that, I was my own party and I didn't need guests to attend the party. But when somebody genuinely wanted to bring their own party, it just felt like two parties came together into like this mega party. It was like the most amazing experience. But that only happened when someone was comfortable enough to share time without needing me to spend my time with them.
Yeah. I like that you brought up need because that's something I've been reckoning with in myself. Um, and just codependency in general, or then the desire to seek out relationships of various sorts and the attachments that come with that, and the sacrifices that you make or I make for those attachments. Because I've been in and out of relationships like since I was 15. Like I've never been single for more than like 2 years in between those relationships. And although I don't regret any of it, I do think I maybe sought validation through other people and through relationships. But it was kind of like a cheap high because, like, even though I had somebody around telling me all these nice things about myself and how much they love me, like, I knew that I was avoiding myself. And so I didn't believe any of the shit that they were saying. Like, I couldn't really, I, I wasn't feeling love. I feel like in a lot of those relationships, it was just like attachment and validation. And that's tough to admit. to yourself. And I think, in relationships I've had more recently, um, like I've been able to see that and take a little bit more responsibility. And like the reason why, like, my last few relationships have ended is because I'm no longer I'm no longer willing to sacrifice my relationship with myself in order to maintain a connection with somebody else, because I know all of that is transient. And I know that it's not required for me to be happy. And it's the pattern in my life of like getting into things and having them end, and then realizing that I only went into that relationship is for, wanting that person's validation. Um, it's tough to, it's been, I'm like losing my train of thought. I'm losing my train of thought as fuck. But yeah, I've realized recently that I need to be okay with being alone, like for real, and do things like take myself out on a date, because I'm like cool with my alone time and stuff. But like there are things that I want to do by myself. I would love to travel alone, or
Mhm.
like go to a restaurant. I don't think I've ever just sat at a like nice restaurant by myself, like table for one, please.
Yeah.
That maybe I should do that. Maybe this week. That'll be my challenge. But yeah, I think it's that relationship with yourself and really thinking about how you want to be spending your time is important, because love isn't as fulfilling as I always thought it would be. Like I thought I would feel completely satisfied in myself, because that's kind of what's suggested to women as they're growing up. Like you'll find, when you get married one day, when you're a mom, like that's always, at least that's how I was raised. Like that was always the assumed end goal.
Mhm.
Um, and that's not it. Like there's more to being a woman than just being a mother, being like somebody that owes themselves or like should give up everything for somebody else. Like we are whole people,
Yeah.
and we should be allowed to like hold that power, or like hold that confidence in ourselves and prioritization of ourselves.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it definitely doesn't feel like it's encouraged because it's definitely not. It is discouraged. You are I got a lot of feedback because I spent a majority of well, actually, I spent all of my teenage years not dating. And I had my first boyfriend at 20. So I was watching my friends date from like 11 years old through 20. So that was 9 years of watching all of my close friends dating and definitely having them try incessantly to hook me up with someone. Oh, Amanda, you're gonna love this guy. Oh my God. Oh, you know what? He's smart like you. Oh, he likes to read books like you. And I was like, okay, just because we share interests doesn't mean that like we're automatically compatible. But it's just that my friends couldn't understand me feeling comfortable or okay with not dating someone, with not having somebody attached at the hip, because that was their life. And so they couldn't understand someone living something opposite to them, but nobody allowed me to do that. In fact, I got a lot of guff for that. And I it's so funny because I thought of myself as a pushover from like my middle school years to early high school. And I was like, I didn't budge at all on that. For all those years that I thought of myself as being a pushover, which I was in very specific contexts. Like if you saw me at home, I was such a pushover with my big brother, who was 8 years older than me or 7 years older than me, and my mother. And I did anything that they said. And if they didn't like it, I would immediately change course to try to get their approval and validation. So in that sense, I was extremely a pushover. But when I was out in public, when I was out and about by myself, you couldn't get me to budge on having a boyfriend when I didn't want to. You couldn't get me to budge on not having sex when I didn't want to. You couldn't get me to budge on a lot. Like I stood my ground, and it's not that I was allowed to do that. I did that despite getting every indication that I shouldn't do that. But it just didn't feel worth it. It just, I had just seen my parents get a divorce when I was 11. And so that impacted me in a great way that I was like, damn, if they didn't work, and if the one man in my life, if the first man that I have a relationship with, if he can walk away from me with no regard, with no remorse, and not look back, then what does anybody else owe me? These are strange, you know boys, from middle school and high school at the time, and I'm like, they don't know shit. They have nothing to offer. They can barely buy me a Coke at a McDonald's. Like, all that they're going to give me is a headache. And that's exactly how I viewed it back then. And so I refused to budge, because I was like, I refuse to have anybody break my heart, especially some little shit who doesn't know anything. And that's I was like, I would not budge on that. And so I was forced to make it work. And I still loved my girlfriends, like my friends that were girls. I loved them fiercely. And I would talk so much shit about their boyfriends to their face and to their boyfriend's face. And I'm like, you're a piece of shit. You don't deserve her. She's amazing. She's incredible. And here you are cheating on her with a girl that's, not my friend. So screw her too. And so I was very loyal and defensive of my friends that were girls, because I empathized with them more. But what I didn't empathize with were the boys, who were just people first. And that's what I feel like. I feel like I'm a person first before I feel like I'm a woman. And I couldn't see the people, the person in them, and how they were just trying to do their best. And they're struggling to find their they're struggling to find, the enjoyment in their life. They're struggling to be the foundation for themselves. And they went down the path that society said you should go down. And they were just young boys and young girls just doing their best. And I judged everybody harshly for not being strong enough to be on your own. And when I finally did date, I definitely recognized how easy it is to get caught up in someone, how nice it is to have somebody that, quote unquote, is on your team, is sticking by you, that sees how special you are, and how tempting it is to want to keep that around. But even then, I'm glad that I was old enough that even in my first relationship, I still did my own thing. I still went to do activities by myself. I still hung out with friends by myself. I refused to be the person who got totally lost in someone else for more than like a weekend. Like, we could get lost for a couple days, but after that, I got shit to do. I've got my own life to lead. I don't live and die for you. So if you think that I'm going to use you as a crutch, it's going to be very little. But that came with its own ripple, because then people never felt like I needed them. And the fact that I didn't need people in a way that made them feel validated was why a lot of my relationships didn't really go in the direction that I thought that they could have. And it's not that anybody did anything wrong. It's just that not even not expressing that need, even being independent in a relationship isn't the answer, because it takes more than just you saying, I don't need you. It's being able to just be space, to share space and time with someone without it needing to go in a direction, but without you explicitly saying, I don't need you. If you left me tomorrow, I'd be just fine. Like, because that was a coping mechanism. So it's just, now the way I treat relationships is very much like, I'm so glad you're here. And I don't know how long this is going to last, but I'm going to make the most of it. And while you are here, I'm going to share my appreciation for you. And that is as best as I can do. And that is enough for me. And if it's not enough for you, then we'll figure it out once we get to that bridge. But until then, I'm glad we're walking together now.
Yeah, and that's beautiful. And I think it can work great if both people are kind of on the same page about, we're responsible for ourselves first. And like, our life courses aren't guaranteed to align forever. And that's not something that we need or necessarily want. Right. But a lot of people approach relationships, thinking about marriage, thinking about I need to find somebody to commit to. I need to find my person. And that's a fuck ton of pressure. That's a fuck ton of pressure to put on somebody else. And it's also just unrealistic. It's an unrealistic, like, expectation to attach to any relationship, that it's gonna last forever. It's gonna be your end all be all, like, forever. Through all of the changes that both of you will inevitably go through, like, I think it's okay to admit that and be open to the fact, like, yeah, like, I'm really enjoying your presence right now. And, like, yeah, if you walked away right now, I would probably miss you, but I would be able to carry on like I have the whole time. Um, but at the same time, like, we're resonating right now, and right now is enough. I don't need you to promise me tomorrow. Like, I don't need for what? Like, I've that is just settling on the certainty that that person being in your life is always going to make you happy, or always going to make you feel safe and fulfilled. And in my experience, that that never really lasts. Like, that always kind of falls flat because, you know, that person that you're attaching yourself to is their own whole person. And the attachment, I think, comes from how their idea of how your idea of them fits into your narrative. But when you think about all of the things about that person that you don't know, all of the struggles that they're going through internally, the way that they're changing, you know, the interests that they have that they're pursuing or maybe they're not pursuing, or just anything that has gone on in their lives, there's so many variables at play. So honestly, it's beautiful that everything can align to the fact where it feels right in one moment, and that in enough is enough to celebrate. But, like, that isn't a guarantee that that feeling is always going to be there. And I think living with that idea as, like, a main priority in our life causes a lot more suffering than it needs to. Like, it's funny to me that it was a deal breaker in relationships that your partners feel like you didn't need them, which to me that's such a green flag. Like, if somebody is, like, needy as fuck, I'm immediately like, run for the hills, because I've been that person, you know, and I know, like, okay, they got some shit that they need to work through. Like, you're cool and all, but respectfully, that's yours to deal with. Um like, the way people attach to you also is not your responsibility. And that's been a hard one for me to learn, for sure. Oh, for sure.
Yeah, yeah, right. Because when you find yourself in the situation where you're not the needy person and the other partner is, it's a very delicate situation, because you certainly don't want to make them feel bad for being the needy one, but that doesn't mean that you have to enable it. Like, you're gonna in those situations, I feel like it requires honest communication, and just sharing, like, "Hey, I'm not in the same mindset as you, and just because we're not resonating doesn't mean that anyone did anything wrong." And so that's a big thing that I've come to, because I used to think that relationships that the romantic portion ended meant that it was a failure, but it wasn't a failure, and it wasn't an ending, except that we both treated it like it was. We could have easily became friends afterwards. We could have easily been happy for the other person going forward if you saw the whole person and not just your ex. And so that is something that I realized later on, because I definitely judged them and judged me, and a lot of those judgments came, or they arose because of the unmet expectations, and the expectations were tied to those labels, you know. And so the minute that someone goes from a friend to a girlfriend or a boyfriend, it's like, oh, now the dynamic has changed, now there are expectations, now there are assumptions. and and I wonder if we think that we need these labels, especially now, because back in the day a lot of relationships were because of territories. And you know, you'd marry off the daughter to form an alliance with someone else, and then you build like this empire together. Outside of the history of that portion of relationships, the way that we treat labels now, the husband, wife, boyfriend, girlfriend, 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 boyfriend, boyfriend, all the fun combinations, the way that we treat them now is that you think that because someone is officially has a title, that that means that they're predictable, and they're not. Plenty of people cheat in relationships, plenty of people lie in relationships, plenty of people are super toxic in official relationships. So it's not like because we've become officially labeled, now I'm not going to get hurt, and vice versa, I'm not going to hurt you. That's bullshit, you know. And so I really like that, you know, if everybody treated each other like an actual friend, you'd be less likely to want to lie to them, to want to lead them on. You'd be less likely to end up forgetting, you know, them as a consideration without it being taken as a loss. Like, oh, because I have to think of someone else, now that means I'm at the mercy of them. No, it's not. But because you don't think about that with your friends, you know, when you think of them, when you think of doing something nice for them, when you think of them and you share a funny story, you don't do that because you're expected to. You do it because you want to, and you show up honestly because you care about the friendship, and you care about more than just your preferences. And so I think if people came with that mindset to their romantic relationships, you wouldn't need it to be labeled, because you would both be treating each other like friends who give a fuck about each other. And so I don't need you to be my boyfriend if you consider me as a whole person, and you you know consider me, and you consider our friendship, and you actually care about it growing and continuing. um but a lot of people, I think, they want to think about marriage, they want to think about official titles, because they think that when you're officially someone in my life, that means you officially can't hurt me. And that is just so far from the truth in my own experience.
Yeah, it's not a guarantee at all. And when you were talking, Amanda, I had this image of relationships like being so like a relationship in its purest form is like a bird, like it's like a flighty feeling, like a something that's delicate but graceful and like just beautiful and to be appreciated, right? And it like sings a little song and it like I don't know, it does a little it does a little dance. This is like this is a funny ass symbol. But like when you feel the need to hold on to it and you put the bird in a cage, the cage is like a relationship. And the bird can no longer fly where it used to go. Um, it can't stretch out its wings as far, and it gets sadder. Like it can't express itself to the fullest extent. And then you're like, why is my bird so sad? And why isn't it chirping like it used to? It's like, oh, maybe because you put it in a cage because you liked it so much. You saw so much value in it being itself that you needed to possess it, and through possessing it, like it became something that you no longer loved. And I think that happens in relationships a lot. We see somebody and they embody something usually that we feel we're missing in ourselves. I'm talking this is my this is realizations I've had about my own past relationships, like what I've really been attracted to in somebody else are traits that I feel like I'm lacking, or like I wish I embodied more of, whether they were like very creative or expressive or fashionable or insightful or, you know, disciplined. Like the list goes on and on. Like if somebody has those traits, I'll be attracted to them. And then rather than like like how you would in a friendship where like being around the person would be like a good influence on you and you can appreciate and learn from other people. um I would look for a validation from that person because it's like, okay, well, if they're valuable and they think I'm valuable, then maybe I am valuable. But that value came from a third party. Like, when in reality, I was using relationships as an excuse to accept myself. And so, like, when I've been left on my own, that's been a whole process of working through all those feelings. And I think at this point in my life, I know that I'm already whole by myself and I no longer like imagine getting married. Like that seems actually something that's terrifying to me. Um so that's just a testament to my growth, but I no longer need to attach myself to people to love them. And I think the more that I want to attach to a person just shows me like how much I still have that need within me that I'm, trying to fulfill through this other person. And I realized that other person is never going to be that thing because at the end of the day, like the relationship just doesn't work out because eventually you realize that they're a whole person and they're not meeting your expectations. And then the connection based on need dissolves in that circumstance. And then it's like, okay, well, if you're not meeting these expectations, then I don't want you in my life. And I used to feel that way too, but now more so I'm like, it's okay if things don't work out in a romantic sense. Like I understand that we're on different timelines and that's okay. And we could still be friends. Like the less you need from a person, the more you can really appreciate them and love them in a way that's genuine and not in a way that's self-serving. Like if you love something, set it free, right? And not with the second part of that quote kind of pisses me off where it's like, and if it's meant for you, it will return or something like that. Cause then it's like holding on to some sort of like hope or expectation. But like, no, if you love something, set it free. You shouldn't be expecting it to come back to you at all. And you'll be okay regardless.
Mhm. I know, but let's like dive into that part of the statement right there. If you love something, set it free. So you're saying that you loved it and you caged it, and then you decided to let it free. I feel like if I truly, if I do love something, I never have a desire to cage it, so there's never a need to free it because I never wanted to trap you. I never wanted to hold you. I never wanted to cage you, and so it just feels like um there's a lot of attachment that I'm hearing in that quote about, if you love something, set it free. It's like if you love something, you should have never fucking trapped it to begin with, in my opinion. I love the phrase that was like, when you like a flower, you pluck it. When you love a flower, you water it. Right. And so I think there's a lot of people that pluck. You pluck people. You see something, they're pretty, you like it, you pluck them. But you don't actually water them. And so but when you pluck something, you could let that go free. But if you're watering a flower, there'd be nothing to let go of because you would have never held on to begin with. And so I do think that is just a certain perspective. And when you were talking about like the relationship is the cage, I don't think the relationship is the cage. I think it's the label and the expectations that are the cage, because there are you technically are in relationships with your friends, with your family, with reality, with yourself, and those things don't require labels, and somehow those feel lighter, or they can for a lot of the reasons. But when we say the word relationship, there's so many connotations that come with that word, and it's like it has to be romantic, and it's like, yeah, but you have so many relationships, and there's varying degrees and varying depths. And so it just feels like, the relationship doesn't have to be a triggering word in and of itself when you're not trying to define it and structure it and build something around just the time being spent with another person who just happens to resonate with where you are, and you are resonating with where they are. That's why you're resonating together, because you both came to that point independently. And so why, when I meet you in this independent spot, do I think that now that means that we're meant to go in another direction together? I can just appreciate that I was doing my thing and living for me. And all of a sudden I look up and there you are. And I'm like, where did you come from? And then we're chatting and we're spending time and we're having this great, and we just happen to bump into each other living for ourselves. And so I think that we could continue that, and the relationship that we may be experiencing doesn't necessarily mean something is going to become heavy. It's the label that adds that weight, because the label has the weight of expectation behind it. And so that's what I think is the real cage, is the labels. Because I think that when you don't have the label, the relationship can just be organic and fluid and light and wonderful, and it will evolve. And so I don't think relationships are the cage, but I do think that the labels and the expectations we tie to those labels are the things that anchor us down into a spot that we think we're supposed to stay in, instead of allowing both birds to fly in whatever direction the wind is carrying them.
Yeah, great point, Amanda. It's the description isn't the described, right? So like the reality of your relationship isn't the label that you tack onto it. And that's what I meant by the whole cage thing. Like it's trying to fit something that's fluid and dynamic and like not able to be put into words into this box that suffocates it, right? Um, but uh, and that insight of just nothing is what you think it is or what you think it should be. People aren't who you think they are. You aren't what you think you are. And holding on to concepts and labels and expectations and judgments and preferences accordingly is only causing friction in your experience. Like it's causing toxic relationships that can be traumatic as fuck. It's causing your low self esteem because you're judging yourself into a corner and you have no room to breathe because you're putting so much goddamn pressure on yourself. And this it's way easier said than done. Like I haven't figured out how to stop doing that, but what helps is catching yourself when you're falling into a pattern or just like becoming more aware of like where your motivations are coming from or your behaviors are coming from, just being curious about it. um you can once there's a little bit more awareness and a little less judgment, you can just pivot and adapt. Like it's never worth like looking back on all the times you were needy in your life and being like, well, fuck, I'm a needy little piece of shit. Like now I need somebody to make me feel better. That's perpetuating the cycle, right? But you can move past that. And it's not about being perfect, but like when you can see through your lens a little bit, it's easier to find balance.
Hmm. And I definitely still feel needy as fuck right now. Like there's definitely, it doesn't go away, but I definitely have been looking at like where that need's coming from. And so I used to just judge the need, and now I try to find out like, what am I trying to solve with that need? What am I trying to get? What's that need trying to obtain from the other person? Um, And it always boils down to either thinking that, I'm not enough or I'm not good enough. And that's what all of my insecurities feel like. That's what all of my needs feel like. And I could say that, I have a million needs and a million insecurities, and I don't know what the number is, but let's just say it's a large number like that. All of them still feel like it's saying the same thing. I'm not enough. I'm not good enough. That's it. That's what all of them, whether I'm not beautiful enough, I'm not smart enough, I'm not skinny enough, I'm not curvaceous enough, all of those things are I'm not enough. That's all my brain translates. All those different insecurities feel like they're all saying the same thing. That from my perspective, I'm not enough for someone else, or I'm not good enough for someone else, and I'm not enough to me. And that's where I think a lot of my needs intersect as well. And so when I feel a need or an insecurity coming up, I'm like, yeah, but my fears and my insecurities are not reality. They're just not, in the same way that my preferences are not reality. What is reality is everything that remains, and my insecurities and my preferences are just assumptions that I'm holding on to. I'm either assuming that I know what someone else prefers and I'm not enough for them, or I assume that I'm not enough for me. And so that I need to have someone around, or I need someone to tell me that I'm worthy or valuable or lovable or beautiful or whatever it may be. And they can't ever say that in a way that abolishes all of the insecurities that want to hear that, because I'm the one that creates that insecurity based on an assumption that I'm not enough, based on an assumption that I'm not good enough. And so it's just reminding myself that my fears are not reality. They're just an assumption. My preferences are not reality. They're just assumptions of what I think would be best for me. And even that I can't say. I've never known what's best for me, and I still moved forward. I never knew what was going to happen, and I still was able to move forward. And so assumptions, negative or positive, don't dictate what's going to happen, but they certainly influence how I see what does happen.
Yeah, absolutely. And underneath that, like, central belief of I'm not good enough is the belief that I know myself, or like I can know myself, or I'm something separate. Like
Mhm.
even that. Like if you're not separate, if I'm not the concept of Jackie, then all of my judgments, preferences, thoughts, beliefs, expectations that are built on top of that, like kind of just fall through. And so that can be like your ticket out of any sort of insecurity or thing that you're stuck in, is just like, oh yeah, I don't know.
You
And so like however you're handling that situation is okay. But like the more that you can bring yourself down to like the ground level of like, okay, I don't know what's best for me. I think I know this person. I don't know them. I don't know me. I don't know how this is supposed to go. Like,
Nope.
I don't know if we're soulmates. I don't know if this is the right relationship for me to be in. Like, I don't, none of it.
Mm-mm.
And even if I decide to end a relationship, I can never know if that was the best choice either. But
Mhm.
like, it's what I did, it's the reality. And you can have that acceptance of just what is, even though you can't understand it.
Mm-mm.
And
Mhm.
that's okay.
Mhm.
Like, you can still experience connection, and in my opinion, in a much more like intense and fulfilling way. Like
Mhm.
actually fulfilling, because it's just resonating with somebody and not needing anything from them. It's like refreshing, it's pure.
Mhm.
And yeah, but at the same time, I don't need it either. I could be alone for the rest of my life, because at the end of the day, like even if I'm in a relationship, I'm still alone
Yeah.
in my experience of being myself. And that's the case for everybody. So like I guess we don't really need to feel as alone in that, but
Mhm.
it's okay. Like I'm safe with myself in just whatever context I'm going through, whatever emotions, whatever judgments or processing
Hmm.
I'm going through, all of it's okay. And I could just keep going. Like, I love that. Like, that's like, just, you don't know. Keep going. Shut up. Keep going.
Keep going. Oh my God, those are like my two favorite words of like the past few weeks. Just keep going. And that used to get me in trouble. And I only mean that where like I would keep going without paying attention. I would keep going despite feeling pain, despite feeling physical and emotional exhaustion, despite getting feedback from the people around me. I would just keep going and just be laser focused on a goal or a preference or a path, right? And now when I think about, just keep going, it's keep going and paying attention as I'm going, paying attention to the way that my body feels, paying attention to the way that, what thoughts I'm holding on to, paying attention, but not paying attention to solve it. I love the analogy of thinking of my life or my life experience as a big vast sky, and my thoughts and preferences and insecurities are just birds flying across that sky. And I can pay attention to what flies across the horizon without labeling every bird that flies by me. And so that's the way that I like to think of it. It's just, yeah, I'm sure that I will see many birds, but I don't need to label them, and seeing any bird is not a problem. There's space for all of it. And so I have definitely got into relaxed mental bird watching. Out there with my binoculars, but we're just moseying about. Oh, there's a cloud. It's shaped like an elephant. Oh, that's a bird. It's a pretty scary looking bird. All right, what else is up? What else is going on? Just,
Yeah.
and just enjoying the view. Without having to turn it into a concept.
Yeah. That's my approach to like meditation recently too. Like, I've enjoyed meditating genuinely because it is like bird watching. Like, it's like, all right, let's see what comes up. And I never expect it. And sometimes I have ideas that I'm like,
Oh yeah,
holy fuck, where'd that come from?
that can't
Or
be
like
mine.
an insight. Yeah, like an insight hits out of nowhere and I'm like, whoa, that's crazy. But sometimes I'm just berating myself in my mind and watching that too. I'm like, oh God, this is getting dramatic. Um it's interesting to watch yourself at once like get caught up in your thoughts and emotions,
Hmm.
and then like alternate between that and being like, oh yeah, but you're just sitting in your room. Okay. And then something else comes up and you get carried away and then you come back.
Hmm.
Um, but that's the case no matter what I'm doing, like not just when I'm meditating, even when I'm awake, the things that I think and do, it's just like interesting as fuck to observe
Hmm.
them. Um, but still at the same time, I have I have no idea what I'm like. Like I would never claim to know. Like I or like even try and define myself in any sort of way, even though I'm like constantly watching myself and with myself, because I
Hmm.
know that I just can't. No, that's not something that can be settled upon, and it's just a process for me to get to experience.
Hmm.
That's so sick.
I love
Like,
that.
that's my main priority in life is just feeling okay with my own existence, um, and being relaxed with whatever comes up and allowing just shit to happen without fighting myself at every turn. Oh
Hmm.
shit.
It's all good. Um, yeah, and relaxing allows for more information to be taken in, for more information to be acknowledged and noticed. Because usually when I was super focused on a thought or a judgment or an insecurity or a fear, it's like all I could see was that fear. All I could see was that preference. And so I was tense and I was panicking because all I could see was this this monster, this boogeyman in the closet of my mind that I'm like, oh no, it's gonna come out. And all I could do was stare at the door. And then it's like I wasn't taking in the rest of the room. Like, yeah, what you think is coming isn't, you can't say for sure. And so it's but relaxing allows for more, allows you to zoom out, because usually when I'm panicked, I'm zoomed all the way in to look at exactly this thing that I'm so terrified of, and I can't see anything else. But the more relaxed I get to be, or the more relaxed I allow myself to be, the more I can see outside of that fear, outside of being zoomed in. It's just an ongoing experience, and things just are. And so, and I used to go from like being like a drill sergeant to myself to being like this like life coach, pep talk, motivator. And I'm like, that's right, we can do anything, and I would think that that was still meant something about me. And so now it's like, it's not that we go from being extremely negative to being extremely positive, it's just being neutral. It just feels like it's neutral and very light. Like, yeah, things are happening. I've got some opinions about those things, but things are just happening. And I don't actually, my opinions don't actually mean anything, and they don't mean anything about me. And so the opinions can come, they can go, but it's just, things just are. And it's becoming a lot, it's becoming a lot more, um, you know, effortless, I guess is the word that I think of. It feels like it's a lot more effortless to just to just be here, to just see what's here, and to see my opinions, but to not think like, oh, that means I immediately need to address them because I've noticed them. So it feels a lot more effortless than it used to. And now I can't help but laugh when I see myself having like a dramatic moment, and I'm like, oh, look who thinks it's all about me. Little old me is having this whole like Chicken Little moment. The sky is falling, I'm not getting what I want, what the fuck, and so I laugh a lot more when I notice that happening, because I also know that that's just usually because I wasn't paying attention. In the same way that I laugh now when I'm running through my apartment because I'm rushing and panicking and zoomed in, and I don't notice the cup and I knock it over and then crash and then everything's everywhere. And I'm just like, of course that happened. Like, of course that happened. We weren't paying attention. We were zoomed in. All I could see was what I was panicking about. And so I laugh when I do something in the physical experience that shows me I'm not paying attention, in the same way that I laugh now when I'm not paying attention to a thought and getting caught up in that thought, because it does still happen. And it's just no longer the worst thing when I noticed that it happened.
Yeah, expecting yourself to never get caught up in shit is just another way that you're trying to control your experience. And it doesn't exist. Like, control is not possible. But like, when you need to believe in that you have control over something, uh, you have to only look at these considerations. So it's putting blinders on, like how they put them on a horse so that they go in one direction rather than like uh, galloping off into the distance, running freely. Yeah, like when you're able to notice, like, okay, um, this control isn't it. You can take off the blinders, and then there's more considerations that you can take in, but it's not about trying to intentionally take them in and like apply them, because you will apply them without having to try to apply them. Like, your intelligence just keeps collecting all the input that it's getting from all your experiences and self-refining based on like what you are telling yourself is a priority, or just what's conducive to your survival. I don't know, like our intelligence is just constantly doing its thing, and we don't have to worry about how that's processing. But we like to think like we have more control that we do. And when you realize you don't at all, like not even in like a self-help, like pick yourself up by the bootstraps sort of mentality, like that's not it either. That's not going to actually make you feel content and at ease, which I think is what most people really want deep down. That's what I want. Like that's the only thing that really matters to me, right? Is like my immediate experience, and like you can have this just internal ease about everything. And in order to have that, you have to be able to surrender to the things you don't know, the things you don't control, and like be okay with that. And
Oh, yeah.
then yeah, it's like that's allowed, right? Like no matter what happens, you'll
Mhm.
be able to handle it. It's okay.
Mhm. No, yeah. I completely agree. I put up the QR code for the Dualistic Unity life troubleshooter because I love that Chat GPT bot. It definitely brings up some excellent points when I find myself caught up, and it's so hard to take it personally because it's an AI. So it's like when I don't like something that I'm reading on one of its responses, I'm like, oh, we really are trying hard to take this personally. This is a robot. This is an AI who is not trying to ruin Amanda's day and not trying to shatter my expectations, but it definitely helps me see like the reflection, like to see how what I'm struggling with is a reflection of what I'm holding on to. You know, what I'm suffering through is a reflection of what I think should be happening. It's a reflection of this lack of control that I'm taking personally, forgetting that I never had control to begin with. So I love using that tool, just checking, you know, just to sometimes not think about something for too long. And so I'll jump in there if I'm like, if I notice myself in like a thought loop and I'm like, all right, I think I've had enough of this. I'm like, so I jump in there and I'll ask a question like, you know, why am I struggling with this? You know, and it's just like, you know, it might just be because you think that you're not meeting some expectation that you shouldn't be experiencing that, you know, and it always just points back to me and points back to where I'm holding on to some expectation that I'm not meeting. So, and I love our chats and I love opening up because it's just, you know, sometimes just hearing it out loud or reading it in text and you're like, oh, I really look like I'm throwing a tantrum right now, or I really look like I am being a big old crybaby, and I'm going like, you know, boo hoo, like, you know, I'm not getting what I want, and I don't like it, you know. And that can be expressed in so many different ways, but but it gives a lot of considerations that I don't always see reflected in my immediate environment, right? So, you know, when I was at work, you know, our company just got bought out by another company. And so, you know, I'm in a meeting with our one of the committees, and they're talking about like what should be the theme, like what are the themes for like some of our events, and people were talking about like the theme of change, and they were saying that because the company just got bought out, and you know, I raised my hand and I made a point. I was like, you know, I'm all for the theme being changes for this year, but I think it's important to give a reminder to everybody at the company that just because the company got bought didn't actually change how we didn't know the future then, right? So like all of you guys that are like losing your shit because the company got sold, it's like, yeah, but when the company wasn't being sold, you still didn't know what the future was for the company, for you, or for anyone else. So the future has always been uncertain. So let's not panic now because all of a sudden now the future seems really uncertain. And it's like, yeah, because now the present is giving you no materials for you to maintain your assumptions. Now you're absolutely, you have nothing, you have no way of holding on to the assumption that you thought you knew the future, because now reality just gave you a burst that bubble. Like, no, the company's being sold, so now you have no, now you really can't even pretend that you know what your next 1, 2, 3 years are going to look like in your career. And so I thought it's important to just recognize that it's not that the future feels more uncertain because now you really don't know. You never knew. And that's okay. So yes, the theme can be changes, but also that like change is just constant. Change is always happening. So it seems like there's more than one way to respond to changes, right? It's not that you change is something that is a surprise, is that it's always happening anyways. So it's not something, it just doesn't seem as scary as it used to.
Yeah, like change is so fucking exciting.
Yeah.
Like, I love that I have no idea what the hell is gonna happen or, like, who I'll become or what I'll
Right.
do. Um, any of it. It's all up in the air, and that's a great reminder, Amanda, of, like, yeah, it's not that now you don't know what the future holds. It's like it's just more obvious to you now because you can't deny it to yourself anymore, right? Like, the false sense of security is never actual security. So I honestly appreciate um more recently in my life when things throw me for a loop and my expectations don't get met and then I'm left like spiraling about that and I'm like, okay, yeah, then no, now I'm in reality for real. Like now, like, okay, that was a reality check that I needed. Okay. Cool. I appreciate that. Um and you can feel safe even within the chaos. Like you're the only one that's telling yourself that you're unsafe because you've always been doing this. Like you've always been existing and handling all the situations that come up in your life. So you're going to keep doing that. And yeah, I'm
And
just excited to watch that unfold.
hell yeah. And on that note, I think we will wrap it up, but definitely want to mention the California retreat because Jackie, I am so excited to hang out with you in like a month. I'm going to be in person. We might record an in-person episode, everyone, for Jackie and I, because we're not always on the same coast. And so I really want to, it's on the table. It doesn't have to happen, but I like that it's an option. So definitely there are 2 tickets left for the California retreat. And scan the QR code or click the link in the comments. And if you're able to make it, we would love to hang out and shoot the shit because eternity is here, and I think there are some cool things we can do with it.
Oh, yeah. It's going to be just completely unexpected and uncertain and nothing like I think it's going to be right now. And I just can't wait to find out what it is. But I know there'll be great conversation to be had. And at the very least, I can't wait to give you a hug, Amanda.
Oh my God,
I, it'll be the blast. So if you can join us, definitely consider it. But thanks for tuning into this episode, you guys. It's been a great chat, and I'm ready to go take a nap.
Here. I will nap once we finish working, but I'm nap for the 2 of us. And one last announcement. Andrew Ray and I are going to be gaming StarCraft later. Jackie, we cannot wait. Of course we can wait. I am excited for when you do. Let me just rewind that. Just excited for when you get your mouse and your keyboard and when you can join us fighting these epic virtual battles against these aliens and these other Zergs and all the other games we're going to play. Definitely excited to game with everyone, and hope you have a great weekend. So we'll talk to you soon. Friday, 4 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Pacific, every week. Do You Real with Jackie and Amanda.
We'll catch you guys next time. Bye, guys.